Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. The other day I did a video showing you how I batch sewed 35 tapestry bags. This video I'm going to show you the tutorial for those bags. So we'll do one bag, but what I'm going to do here today, I'm going to show you 3 different zipper techniques. The technique itself is pretty much the same, but whether you do number 3 dress zips or number 5 continuous zips, or have tabs or don't have tabs, I'm going to go through a few different options with you and show you how you put them in and then what the outcome is or how they look at the end of the video. Stick around and we'll work on this one together. It's an easy project. Okay, whilst I have enough fabric here to do several bags, this is what we need to make one bag. I have 2 lining pieces that are 13 by 7.5 inches. You'll need 2 main pieces that are also 13 inches by 7.5 inches. We need a strip of fabric that is 2 inches wide. This is going to be for the tabs at the side of the bag. Normally I would use the same fabric, but because this is a tapestry fabric, it's a little bit heavy and I've just gone and opted for something a little bit lighter. Just a scrap of fabric will do. And then I need a scrap of fabric for one of the zipper tabs. And that just needs to be as wide as the zip itself. Now, as for the zip, I'm going to show you a few different techniques for putting the zips into the bag. You get to see how the bags differ when we're finished. So for one bag, you only need a 12-inch zip. This is a regular dress zip, which is equivalent to a number 3. I'm going to show you also using a number 5 continuous zip. And I'll do another technique with this other colour. Let's get started. The first thing we want to do with our fabric, we've got both sides of our outer fabric and both sides of the lining. The first thing we want to do is mark a curve on the bottom edge of our fabric. You can use a cup or a saucer, just a small curve is all we need. I'm just going to mark that curve there and another one there. And the measurement for this curve is 1.5 inches from the top corner. So come down 1.5 inches to here, 1.5 inches across to here, and then you can make your curve. Place all the fabric together, and it doesn't matter whether you mark the lining or your main fabric. I'm marking whichever one is more visible when I use my marker. I've clipped all the layers together so that I can cut everything in one go. And I'll just take my scissors and cut out that curve on the edge of my fabric. So the shaping of my bag is complete. Set that aside. Take your 2-inch strip of fabric. You only need about 5 inches all up for each bag, so 2 inches by 5 inches, and it'll be cut in half because I'm going to do a couple of them. I've just got a long strip. Take this fabric, fold it wrong side together, and then take the raw edge and fold that in half again, secure those edges, and with that clipped together, we can go to the machine and sew all the way down both long edges of this, and then we can trim that to size later. We'll be trimming it to 2.5-inch strips. For the first zip, we can get right to it by putting the zip straight into the bag. I've got the metal bar at the end of the zip on both sides, and I'm going to leave that. I generally don't, but for this purpose of this video, I'm going to. You can see that the end of the zip is roughly the same size as the bag. The metal bars end around about here, so that'll give us at least a 1/2-inch seam allowance. We're going to place this zip right side facing down. So you want the bumpy side of the zip faced down and centre that evenly across your bag. If you want to, you can fold this in half, find the centre, fold your fabric in half and find the centre. I usually just eyeball it. And if you don't have double-sided tape, you can get some clips and clip it in place like that. And then you'll take your lining. This is the pretty side of the lining. You'll have that faced down to the pretty side of the fabric, and you'll line that up evenly across the fabric as well, and you can pin or clip your zip in place. I like to use double-sided tape, so I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. One of the benefits of using double-sided tape is that the fabric doesn't shift. A lot of our machines with a presser foot have a tendency, as it's sewing along, to push on the fabric, and you can see how that moves that along. So the top layer quite often will be distorted and end up stretching out across, and it'll end up being longer than your finished bag. So the double-sided tape is one way of eliminating that. So again, I've got the bumpy side of the zip. I'm going to place that faced down, line that up along the straight edge of the fabric, and repeat that for the lining. I'm just going to place the tape directly over the top of the edge of the zip and place that one down as well, remembering that the right sides will be facing. And this lining piece is to be on the wrong side of the zip, so the smooth side of the zip is where the lining piece sits. So that's what we're doing for this bag. For the next one, I'm going to make some tabs on the end of my zip. Again, I'm using a regular dress zip, and I don't want these metal teeth. Open the zip. I'm going to cut off the metal bar at the end. I've cut my strips into about 3.5 inch strips. If this piece of fabric was a printed fabric like this, I would place right sides together. So I would take my zip and place the pretty side onto the end of my zip like that, okay? And so you'd have the wrong side showing. So take the fabric, fold it in half and just place that over the end of your zip. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit bigger. For this side, we want to do the same. Close the zip just a little bit. We don't want to take the slider off the end. I'm going to remove these metal teeth, and we'll take the other piece of fabric and place that exactly the same way. Fold that across, keep the zip ends together, and you'll take that to the machine and sew down the side. To help keep the end of the zip together, I'm going to use a little bit of tape. So that little bit of tape will stop the teeth from spreading apart as I'm sewing. Take that piece again, fold it together, right side together, pop the fabric over the end there, and now that'll be much more secure to take to the machine and sew the ends down. So on this zip here, all we're doing is sewing 1/4 inch in from the edge on both sides. With the continuous zip, I'm going to split this in half, and I'll take my fabric, and this zip wants to be a little bit longer than the fabric that you've got. Again, I'm just going to use my double-sided tape and the zipper tape. So I've got the plain edge of your zip and the zipper teeth here. The bumpy side needs to be faced down. So the straight edge along the top and the bumpy side of the teeth faced down over your fabric. Line that up. Take your lining piece and we'll do the same thing, just place that directly over the top, and then the lining can be right side to right side, and line that up. So we've got a continuous zip and a regular zip with the metal tabs still in place, and I've got one zip that's got the metal tabs cut off. I'm quickly going to go and sew the ends of this, and then I'll come back and we'll put this one onto the other piece of fabric. All I've done with this zip is sewn 1/4 inch in from the outside edge, so the folded edge is here, the end of the zip is there, and the raw edges are all hidden away underneath this fabric. So when you push that fabric away, you'll have a nice neat edge on the end there, and these raw edges will be hidden away inside the lining. Doesn't matter if they're too big, we can trim the sides off to even that out, and any excess length will be trimmed off when we finish the bag. The tape can be removed now, and the slider isn't going to go anywhere. We can take our next bag piece and place the zip right side down. So you've got the end tabs there. You can see that they're way too long. Doesn't matter, we'll trim that after. So you want to find the center of your zip and the center of your fabric. I will line up the zip section and find the center. And I'll find the center of my fabric, mark that in pink. Again, you can just eyeball this like I did with the previous zip. The bumpy side is faced down. I've taken a little nick out of the zip there, and I'll line that up with that mark I've made, and I'll go and clip the zip all the way along, or use your double-sided tape. You'll take your lining piece and find the center of that as well. I've marked that in pink, and we'll place that over the top of our zip. So we've got 3 different options now. We've got the zipper tabs, the zip with the end stops, and a continuous zip. Okay, it's off to the machine we go. We have 3 different zipper techniques and the fabric for our side tabs. We'll go and sew those together now. First of all, it's the long strip for the side tabs. We'll go down all the way down the long edge to close up one side, and then we'll turn the fabric around and stitch up the other side. That'll make it nice and flat. Then we can cut it up into 2.5-inch strips. Now I'm ready to sew the zip in place. I'm placing my lining fabric underneath. Because the lining fabric is a lighter weight fabric, it's going to have less tendency to shift when it's faced down. If you have your lining faced up, then as you're travelling along with the pressure on the sewing foot is actually going to cause the fabric to push it forward. Then you can potentially stretch out the fabric and it'll end up being longer than the main fabric. So it's much better if you actually have your lining faced down. When your zipper slider is in the way, you'll just have to stop with the needle down, slide it out of the way, and then continue on sewing. Okay, we've done all 3 zips now. The sewing of the zip at this first stage is exactly the same for each one of them, so there's nothing different. You just sew all the way down that long edge. So far that's the same. The fabric for the tabs, I've cut that up into 2.5-inch strips. Well, I'll set that aside, and we're now ready to do the other side of the bag. Grab your other outer fabric, and we'll take the zip and place the 2 right sides of the fabric together and line that up so that the side edges match up, and then bring it to the top and press that in place, or you can use your pins or clips. This is the zip that still has the metal tabs on the end of it. Run some more tape along the top there, and the next lining piece, and that's ready to go to the machine to be sewn down the same way we did with the other side. This one here is the technique to put the tape on is exactly the same. So I'll do that in a minute. And this one here is the one with the separated continuous zip. So I've got the other piece now, and I'll take the other piece of fabric. This is the bumpy side here. We want that faced down, and the zipper tape facing the outside edge. So bumpy side down, place that down onto the fabric, and I'll grab my lining. There you go. So far the only difference between putting the other side of the zip on is that the continuous zip, I can actually separate the pieces. It just sits nice and flat when we're putting it together. But now I'm going to take this back to the sewing machine, and the insertion of the zip will be exactly the same as the first side. While I'm at the machine, I might as well put my tabs on as well. Open up the fabric. We only want to put these tabs onto one half of the bag. Fold the tab in half, raw edge toward the outside. Place that on the edge of the fabric, and I've got that sitting about an inch, 3/4 to an inch down from the edge of the zip. And we'll repeat that for this side as well. Fold it in half, raw edges to the outside, and line that up so that it's even with the one on the other end. So I'll take that to the machine, sew the zip first, and then we can sew the side tabs in. Nothing different on this side. We'll just sew all the way down that long edge of the zipper tape. When you get to it, you just need to remember to move that zipper slider out of the way. Once you've done that, open out the sides of your bag, and then you can stitch those tabs in place. Our seam allowance for this is going to be between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch. I don't really have a preferred size. I let the side of the fabric dictate what my seam allowance is. I'm going to sew the tabs on about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Of course, you want to make sure that your lining fabric is well away from the fabric that you're stitching the tabs to. So far we've got the zips in on both sides of our bag. This is the one that's got the tab. Once that's open, the tabs will stop the slide from falling off. And this one here, I've left the metal teeth on. So at the moment when this zip is open, it's going to fan out like that because we still need to close up that side edge. And the other one that has the continuous zip, that's still in 2 pieces. I'm going to leave it like this for the time being. What we need to do now is top stitch. So to top stitch, you need to have your lining and your main fabric together, and then you want to make sure you pull the fabric away from the zip, and you'll be sewing about 1/8 of an inch onto the fabric, not on the zip, all the way along until you get to the end. I prefer not to start right at the very end and finish at the end. I'll probably leave about the thickness of my finger on the end, so that's about 3/4 of an inch to an inch. I'll start sewing here, go to the end, and I'll stop sewing just before the end there. So I'll leave about 3/4 of an inch to an inch unstitched in the top stitching. The reason for that is that when you're closing up your bag later, it'll actually make it easier when there's not the thickness of the top stitching on the very end here. It makes the seam less bulky. So I will do that with all of the bags. And this one here where the metal tabs are, I'll start from the side of the tab and go to where the other side of the metal tabs are. And this one here where I've actually sewn tabs onto the end, that's my starting point. So the end of the zip here, go along and finish at the other end of the zip. That way where the tabs are, there's no stitching done, and there's going to be less bulk when I close the bag up. And hopefully when you've sewn your tabs on, you've remembered that the lining fabric needs to be to the back. So sewing your tabs on, you just want to do that on one layer of fabric. Let's go and do some top stitching. When top stitching, I do like to have my fingers in between the layers of the lining and the main fabric. That helps me to slightly pull the fabric away from the zip, keeping it nice and even underneath. Remember to have your lining and your main fabric together on each side. I'm going down one side of the zip to do the top stitching. Once I finish that, I'm going to do exactly the same thing, turn around and come down the other side. Move the zip slider out of the way when you get to it. While I'm at the machine, the zip with the metal teeth at both ends needs to be closed up at one end. I'm just going to put some of this tape over the top of the zip to keep it lined up and together, and then I'm going to stitch over just the very edge of the zip. You want to be careful not to sew over the metal teeth there as well. So just go gently and make sure the needle of your machine comes down to the right hand side. I'm only going to be sewing on the area where the actual zipper tape is and not on the tapestry fabric itself. And I'll just be going back and forth a couple of times. Top stitching is done for all of the bags. We still need to put the zip slider on this one here, and that one's nice and neat. This one here is the one that we've just sewn the one side together, and I've just put a strip of tape along there that peels off really easily, and those few threads there have held the zip in place, and that'll make it easier for us when we close up the bag, which is what we're going to do next. It's important now to make sure that your zip is open at least most of the way. So all of the zips need to be open. Otherwise, when we finish the bag, we won't be able to turn it through. This one here needs the slider put on. So I'm going to show you this in real time, how to put the slide on. A lot of people have trouble with them, and I do find number 3 zips much more difficult to get on than the number 5. This is a 5. I usually use a number 5 because it's a lot easier. Line up the fabric so that you've got the side edge even. You can see my zipper tape is not the same size to begin with. I can trim that back. If you've got labels on your bag, I like to have my label on the right hand side because I want the zip on my bags to open from left to right. Most bags are done like that. So if I have my label to the right or the front to the right, the curved edge of the zip facing me and the fabric lined up, I'm going to put the curved edge in on one side of the zip, and it's just going to sit there until it stops. I'm not going to force it, it's just where it stops. Put my finger behind there to stop it falling off. Take the other side of the zip and put that on until it stops. I'm holding the end of the zip in place, and then I just pop my finger onto the floppy thing and put my fingers on both sides, apply some pressure and push. And that's as easy as it is. So that was a few seconds. Now that's not to say that I get it right the first time every time. Sometimes this is really uneven and I'll have to go back and do it again. Now what I'm going to do is run the zip all the way through. So I've got the bag completely closed all the way. Now the reason I've done that is because I want to put my zip slider in the middle of the bag so that when I come to putting the bag together, these aren't open and it makes it a lot easier and quicker to sew. This one here has tabs on the end. This one here has metal teeth on the end, but I have had to sew that closed. By putting the slide back on, I get to keep that in the middle. So pull that open a little bit, doesn't matter how far, and we'll do exactly the same thing. Pop the slide on, hold it in place, pop the other side on, hold that there, just grab that wiggly thing, fingers down, push, and then my slide is in the middle. And you can see the teeth are nice and even on both sides. If it doesn't look even, or if you find you've stepped your tape a little bit, you can just pull that off and try again. With the zip slider in the middle now, I don't actually have to worry about opening my zip, because when I finish my bag after and I turn it through, I can actually just pop my fingers on the side there and start opening that up. I don't want to do that just yet. If you're more comfortable, you can go and over sew this area like you did with the other zip just a minute ago, but you don't need to do that. Now we can take our bag to the machine and we can close them up. So the closing up of all the bags is exactly the same for all of them. Let's go with this one. We want to have right sides together. Remember to have your zip open. We don't have to do any boxed corners on these bags because the corners have been curved, which makes the whole process a lot simpler. For the side where the zip is, it doesn't matter whether you have the tape facing the lining or toward the main, as long as you do the same thing on both sides. Line up the edge of the tape and the fold of the seam at the top there, and then you can pin or clip it in place. Match up all your seams and clip the rest of the bag up. And we'll do that for the other side as well. On the lining, leave an opening of about 3 or 4 inches. For all of the other bags, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'll line up the ends with the zip first, then the corners or the curves, and then the rest of the bag. I've left the opening there, and I can now go and sew all the way around. When I do the section where the zipper tape or teeth is on both sides, I'll triple stitch over that, so I go forward, back and forward, then continue on around. When I sew the final row of stitching all the way around the bag, I like to start with the outer fabric facing toward me and the lining to the back, and I'll actually start sewing on the side of the zip just below the zipper tape. This means that I can actually have more control over what happens at the side seam where the zip is, because it can get bunched up there, it can shift with the pressure of your foot. So I will actually sew just in front of the zipper tab where my foot sits nice and flat, then continue all the way around the outer fabric and come up to the other side, and then I'll continue on and do the lining up until I get to the end where I've got to leave the opening. With our bags almost finished, all we need to do is tidy it up. We'll trim off any excess seams and clip any curves, and then we can turn it the right way around. So any frayed bits, I like to tidy those up. I'll cut off the ends of the zipper tab, and around the curve, I'll cut the curve a little bit closer to the stitching line just to allow the fabric to sit better, but I won't clip into the curve. And now I can turn my bag the right way around. When you've turned it around, push out both top corners as firmly as you can so that you get a nice angle at the corner, and where the curves are, just run your finger along the bottom of the curve. That'll help smooth out those rounded edges. Won't be long now and we'll see the difference between the zips and have a few finished products. Okay, now that we have pushed our corners out, rounded our curved edges, we're ready to take this back to the machine and close up the bottom edge. Don't need to tidy up the bottom edge just yet because we'll do that when the bag's finished. Pinch the edges together, take that straight to the machine, and we'll sew from here to here. At this point here, I put the pressure of the foot onto my fabric where I'm about to start sewing. Then I can hold the fabric taut whilst I pull it, and these folds will automatically want to sit underneath, and then I can stitch along that opening and close it up. I had a little bit of extra fabric, so off camera I did make a 4th bag. Now, at a glance, you can't really tell the difference between the finishes of the zips, but there are 4 different finishes here. Let's have a look. The first one, if you remember, I put the tabs on the end of the zip. It has a nice little finish on the edge there, and the fabric just comes up straight, and then you've got your tab and the zip inside there. The second one is the one where I've left the metal teeth on both ends of the zip. It sits up a little bit awkwardly. I don't really like the finish there. On the other side, you can see the metal tab there as well. This one here is the number 5 continuous zip without a zipper tab. So that sits fine just like that. And then this one here is the number 5 continuous zip with a zipper tab. So to compare that with the number 3, or the dress zip, I've done the zipper tabs on both of those, and it's just the size of the zip that differs. They have a nice finish on the end there. If I'm doing a lot of bags, I often will go and opt for this method because it means I don't have to worry about the extra time that it takes to put tabs in, but I do prefer tabs. Now, this one here, where I've left the metal teeth in, although it's an easy option, there's less work involved, I think it's a much more dangerous way of sewing. I'd actually forgotten that I had the metal bits at the end to contend with when I was at the machine. I was very lucky that I didn't actually hit the metal bars when I was sewing. I completely forgot that they were there. I just zipped through. I could have broken a needle at any time. It could have done some damage to my machine. So this is an option that I would never use when I'm making my bags. Even if I had finished the end properly, I don't like the metal teeth showing. I just think it's cleaner without them. My favourite type is the ones with the tabs on the end. I think they're much neater and they secure your zip a lot better as well. So there are the different finishing options. There are lots more options. There's also the butler method. If you'd like me to do a tutorial for that, let me know and I can do that. But there are lots of good tutorials on the butler method available, but I will do one if you want. So there are the 4 finished bag options. The rest of it is all exactly the same. We've got the curved corner on the bottom of the bags. I hope you've enjoyed this video. A few days ago I put up a video of me batch sewing 35 of these bags made from sample upholstery swatch fabrics, and these are just the remnants that I've got left over from a box that I received. The video I put up the other day was me showing you how I go through the processes of putting the bags together, my assembly line essentially. And this is the video showing how I actually put those bags together. When I did the video, I used the technique with the number 5 zip and no zipper tabs because I was making so many of them. I wanted to save time. But you can use any one of those zipper techniques to make all of these bags. And you can also use any of these zipper techniques to make boxed bags or any other bag that you wanted to. I don't like the one with the metal ends. I don't think they look very nice at all. I think I'm just not used to doing them that way. It's not my preferred method. Also, when you forget that you've actually got metal teeth still on there and then you go and take it to the machine, you've got the possibility of breaking your needles. I'm lucky that didn't happen. I'm going to add these to my shop stock, and I'm pleased to report that the other 35 have been in the shop for 2 days. Today's Sunday and we open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I've had them in the shop for 2 days and I sold one yesterday and one today. I'm selling them at $30 each. That's in Australia. And the customers seem to be pretty happy with them. So for now, I'm going to leave them at that price. Hopefully they won't last too long, but I'm pretty happy that they've already started selling. Anyway, I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.